The countdown is on, but you're not alone. This is Countdown to College, your weekly guide from Education Quest Foundation, here to help you plan, apply, and pay for college one step at a time. I'm your host, Gage, and I'm happy to be joined by Becca Dobry, the area-wide Director of Financial Aid at Central Community College. Hi, Becca. Thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks, Gage. I'm excited to be here.
Now, today's episode is all about financial aid offers. So if you're a high school senior, you'll probably start receiving some financial aid offers from some colleges pretty soon, but at first glance, they can be pretty confusing. There's a lot of estimated costs, net costs, all sorts of numbers, so Becca will help us break this all down. Becca, why don't we just start somewhere simple first? For families maybe hearing this term for the first time, what exactly is a financial aid offer and what does it usually include?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a financial aid offer, to just to look at it high level, is is the funds or the money that's been allocated by either the federal government or the institution to you to help cover your cost while you're attending a fall and a spring semester. There's a lot of things that could be included in a financial aid offer. So not only the funds that are being allocated to you, but there's also such things as what the estimated cost is. So how much the tuition and fees might run you, how much books might run you, but even such things as how much personal expenses or living expenses might cost you. Then there's a lot of the fine prints talking about how you accept your financial aid offer, or certain things that you must do to get those funds. So it's a big picture with a lot of information, and it's really hard sometimes to break it down. But that's why the financial aid office at your institution is there. They really can help you go through that on a step-by-step basis, see what has been given to you, allocated to you to help cover those expenses.
Yeah, that's something we hear a lot when we interview financial aid professionals is just come into the office. Like everyone's there, happy to help you, ready to help you.
Yep, absolutely. That is the best advice that I can give any student, honestly, is to just come in, because each student is so individualized that we need to be able to talk to you on that one-on-one basis.
Great. Sticking with the big picture, I kind of talked about how, students will be receiving some of these financial aid offers soon, but let's get a little bit more specific. When should students expect to receive their financial aid offers from colleges, and what kind of factors can affect that timeline?
Oh, yeah, that's a crazy question, because it really it really is based upon so many different factors. So let's start with the highest factor that we have. So students think a lot of times, oh, I've completed that free application for federal student aid, I'm good to go. And you may be good to go, but the financial aid office isn't. So we have to sometimes wait for the federal government to give us information before we can even go out with a financial aid offer. And so you may be completing that FAFSA in October, but we don't have all of the necessary information from the government to even start to process that until January or later. And so the timeline is sometimes very dependent upon the government. Then to look at the student basis, when we are able to start processing a student's application, we may need additional information from that student. And so as a student, you want to really be on top of that, looking at and watching your emails and any communications that's coming from the college, because we may be sending you stuff and saying, hey, we need X, Y, and Z documents before we can process that. As for the timing, for the 26-27 year, I would say probably if you haven't already started to receive one from your institution, within the next month or month and a half, you probably should start receiving it. I think we all feel that we finally got everything that we need from the government to start processing them accurately. So I know that for Central Community College, we are starting to ramp up here in the next couple of weeks to get those offers out onto the street. But each institution is different, of course. And each institution type. So if you're applying for more of like the private colleges, they do have a tendency to go out a little bit earlier than maybe the community colleges. So you might get a financial aid offer before with them before you get one with a community college. But again, each institution is a little bit different. But for 26, 27, I would say within the next couple of weeks to a month, you should be starting to see them on the streets.
Great. Yeah, we hear a lot on this podcast for a variety of reasons. When you're a senior, to be checking your email, checking your student portal constantly.
Yes, absolutely. That is a great advice.
Now, let's dive a little bit deeper into the actual financial aid offers. What is kind of the best way to read a financial aid offer step by step?
Yeah, I wish that there would be one guide, but there's not. Okay. Each institution, like each student, we have a different layout or format of how that financial aid offer is going to look for you. So the things that you're going to want to be looking at for that financial aid offer, first and foremost, is what is the cost to attend there? So you want to be looking at what the tuition and fees, what books are going to be running you, if you plan on living on campus, what they're estimating housing and meal plans. And those three categories we sometimes refer to, or you might see in a financial aid offer, called direct cost. So essentially something that's being built from the billed from the institution. Then you're going to see other costs such as miscellaneous or transportation expenses. And those are costs that we know students have, but they're not going to be ran through us. There's going to be something that you need to budget for. And so when you're looking at it, I would recommend trying to find that first and foremost. So you can understand, hey, this is how much I need to prepare to pay to the college. And then this is what they're saying to potentially prepare for that I need to not pay to the college, but actually have to pay for during that year. After that, then you really do want to start looking at what type of financial aid's been offered to you. Do you have grants, so money that you don't have to pay back? Do you have loans, student loans that you may have to pay back, or not may, you have to pay back? What is the fine print? Are there deadlines or due dates that the financial aid office is asking you to do? All of that should be in there. And so I always like to say, look at the cost first, then look at the aid that's been given to you, and then double check that fine print to make sure that there's nothing you're missing on that.
Now, I know this is something that I remember confused me when I first started getting some financial aid offers, was the difference between, the gift aid that you mentioned and self-help aid. Why does that distinction matter?
Yeah, so gift aid and self-help aid are terms that are used by financial aid. And again, those are very, very possible terms that you're going to see on your financial aid offer. However, I shouldn't say however, what they are is gift aid is literally a gift to you. It's money or funds that you don't have to repay. The most common one, or the one you hear about a lot, is, of course, Pell Grant. Pell Grant is considered gift aid. It is something that you're eligible for based upon your financial aid, or based upon your FAFSA, to see what type or how much you're getting. Gift aid will also include other institutional types of grants and also scholarships. So there's all of these funds that essentially you don't have to repay. Self-help aid is aid that you actually have to do something to get and or have to repay. So the most common type of self-help aid is loans, student loans and or parent loans. And those are essentially loans that you can take out as a student and or a parent to help cover the cost of college. But they are a loan, so you have to repay them. So essentially, you're helping yourself by taking a loan out while you're in college, and then you make payments on it once you graduate. Another type of self-help aid is called work study. And I just want to take a couple seconds to talk about work study, because I think it's a confusing aid for a lot of students. Work study is not money you should count on towards covering your balance. Work study is offered through financial aid because the funding for the positions come from the federal government. But work study is a job that you get a paycheck for to help with your living expenses. So those other costs that I was talking about, like the miscellaneous personal expenses or the transportation expenses, that's what you should plan on using your work study funding for. You shouldn't plan on using your work study funding to help cover your books or your tuition or fees, because those are upfront costs, and you get a paycheck from work study instead of going towards your balance.
Yeah, we just did an episode with students talking about the scholarships that they earned, and they mentioned some of those. You don't see the parking tickets like on the financial aid offer. Like if you get a parking
Yep.
ticket, you're gonna have to deal with that eventually.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, Becca, some offers can look generous at first glance. What are just some fine print items that students should be watching out for? Things like non-renewable scholarships, stuff like that.
Mhm. Yeah. So I think talking about scholarships specifically, let's look at that first. The non-renewable one is a big one, but more specific is the renewable ones. There's a lot of fine print to renewable scholarships that you need to be aware of. So renewable scholarships will have all sorts of requirements. You might have to keep a certain GPA. You might have to take so many credit hours, but it could also go into you need to participate in X, Y, and Z events to keep those scholarships. So when you get those renewable scholarships, you really do want to read those agreements to make sure that you're following those, because once they're gone, unfortunately. For the aid package as a whole, I think one of the most confusing aspects to it is that it is only for one academic year. And when I talk about an academic year, I'm talking about your fall semester and your spring semester. So we offer financial aid for just 1 year, and it renews every year. We do not guarantee that your financial aid offer will be the same year after year. It will change. It will change based upon your results from your free application for federal student aid. It will change based upon the student aid index that you have. It will change based upon your GPA. But it could also change based upon your grade level. So there are some institutions where incoming freshmen are offered higher financial aid packages than continuing students. And that's because we do know that students sometimes have a typical higher cost as a typical freshman than they do as a continuing student. But all of those types of things could come in or be in that fine print. Another fine print that you want to watch for is deadlines, especially when it comes to scholarships. If you need to accept a scholarship by a certain date, make sure you're accepting that scholarship by that certain date, because you don't want to miss out on it. There's scholarship fine print, such as you need to, like I said, submit an agreement or a thank you letter. All of those types of things should be in that financial aid offer for you to act on and do.
That's great. Now, Becca, let's say I am a student who, applied to a bunch of different colleges. I got accepted to them, listed them on my FAFSA, so they got sent my financial aid info. And now I'm starting to get a bunch of financial aid offers. When comparing those offers from multiple colleges, what's kind of the smartest way to line them up and compare them, so you're kind of comparing apples to apples?
Yeah, that's really hard to do. I'm not going to lie. And I might be a little old school here, but I would print them out. And I'm saying that because, as I said it earlier, financial aid offers, while we may have the same jargon, we're not going to all have the same layout. So you're not going to be able to lay them side by side and say, okay, here's the identical line items across the board. You're going to maybe have to hunt and pick for them. So it is that apples to apples comparison. So I will tell you, go old school, print them out so you don't have to have like 30 tabs open or 5 tabs, whatever it is. But print them out so you can compare them that way. And then you do want to hunt for them, and you want to find the information that is the same. So you do want to find the section that is the self-help that talks about the loans. You want to find the section that talks about the grant aid. So you are looking at the exact same lines. And it may help to rewrite them so they are identical on a piece of paper. And then you really do want to kind of just take time. And if you have questions about any of your aid offers, you go back to the financial aid office and say, okay, I'm not understanding this component of your financial aid offer. Or can you explain this to me in a different way so I can make sure I'm comparing this aid offer the same as this aid offer? We try to, the financial aid administrators typically try to use the same jargon or the same words, but we may use them slightly different, or they might be just slightly off. And so what one financial aid offer is saying is probably the same as another financial aid offer. It's just we're not using the exact same terminology. And so if you're like, oh, I think it's close, but I'm not quite sure, call the financial aid office. We'll help you and walk you through that.
Yeah, that's great advice. Because I remember I was a very visual person and trying to have like my 20 tabs open. I was like, I cannot do this. I need to print these out.
Right. I mean, if it was me, I'd probably get like multiple different color highlighters too to involve in that. I mean, yeah.
All right. So when families are, looking through these financial aid offers, is there something that they should focus on to decide which offer is maybe the best financially for them? Like, is it the net cost? Is it the out-of-pocket? Debt at graduation? What's that look like?
There is no one right answer to this, and it really has to be on the individual student and family level. I've had these conversations throughout my whole career, and every single student's goals by the end of college are vastly different. And so how or what's the aid offer is offering you and what's best fit for you is going to be vastly different from the next student. So some of the things that you want to think about when you're looking at that aid offer in your goals. Let's just talk about net cost a little bit here. Net cost is a little bit confusing when you look at a financial aid offer, because net cost on a financial aid offer is going to be not just what you're paying to the institution, but it's going to be all of those other indirect costs, such as that transportation and miscellaneous expenses, minus just that free money, that gift aid. And so your net cost may show up and it might be a sticker shock and you're like, oh, I cannot pay all of that out of pocket. Well, it actually might not be that much. If we're just looking at what you want to or what you have to pay for to the institution, that's just going to be your tuition and fees. If you're living on campus, your housing and your meals, and then of course, books, depending upon whether they're charged through the institution or not. Those are the costs that you have every semester and that you're going to have to pay for. If you're like, as a family, you're like, you know what, we've got the miscellaneous and transportation expenses, then you need to recalculate your next net cost, removing those components from it so you can see where you're at. If you're looking at your out-of-pocket expenses, you want to say, yep, okay, as a family, we can afford X amount per semester out of pocket. And then that's where, when you're looking at those costs, we'll say, okay, yep, I really can afford this or not. Now, debt at graduation, that is an individual, a truly individual conversation and a decision that students need to make. There are a lot of students that are debt adverse at this point in time, and it's perfectly fine. Loans are scary. And you do have to weigh the fact that you will have to repay those loans after you graduate with your potential income compared to the institution that you're attending. And it might make more sense to stay away from the debt, and it might make more sense to go into the debt or lean into it. When you look at debt and when you look at loans, there is no one right answer. You have to make that decision on an individual basis. I also would encourage you to look at your other options when you look at your goals. Are your goals to be in and out in 4 years if you're going to a university, or a 2 years at a community college? Or are you comfortable going longer and not having to take that debt out? So if you're like, I'm going to pay this out of pocket and not take debt, well, then you may have to consider lengthening how long you're at the institution to get that degree.
This sounds like a great moment where your highlighter method would come in handy.
Right? Yeah.
All right, Becca. Now, we touched on them just a little bit, but I do want to go just a little bit more in depth. Do students need to respond to all these financial aid offers they receive? Like, what does that accepting or declining an offer usually involve?
Yeah. So technically, no. Students don't need to respond to all the financial aid offers that you receive. However, selfishly, as a financial aid administrator, I would love for you to respond to me. So if you're not attending my institution and you don't want that, it allows me to open that aid up for another student. But if you don't tell me that you're not coming, we will eventually find out at the start of the semester and we will cancel out that financial aid offer. So no, you don't have to do anything. I would encourage you to, just because it makes it easier for the financial aid office. What does accepting or declining it typically look like? It's going to typically, most institutions are going to be an online acceptance. So you'll more than likely have a student portal, and you'll just need to log into that student portal and, if required, accept it. Now, generally speaking, gift aid, such as Pell Grant, you don't have to make any acceptance on it. It's free money. We're not going to let you decline free money, so it's automatically accepted for you. The same goes with institutional or state grants. Now, scholarships are usually accepted for you, but they may be held up because there's some of that fine print, like you have to turn in the agreement. The aid that is not going to be accepted for you is going to be your self-help. So those student loans and that work study. Those you will actually have to do something on your student portal to accept them so we can start processing them. But it again is all through that student portal online that you'll get into. Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of leads into my next question. If student loans are part of the offer, what does that process look like?
Yeah. So student loans, there are, for student loans specifically, there's two types of student loans that we'll be offering out students. The first type is what's called a subsidized student loan. And that's a loan where the interest is not accruing, or the federal government is actually paying off the interest on the loan while the student's in school. And then there's an unsubsidized loan where there is interest being charged on the loan while the student's in school. Both of those loans, or the determination of how much of those loans you may get as a student, is based upon your FAFSA results and all sorts of things. So students may get both a combination of subsidized and unsubsidized loans, or they may just get an unsubsidized loan. But regardless of any of that, there are essentially 3 steps students have to complete in order to get the loan. The first one is, like we just talked about, is accepting it on your student portal. The great thing about loans is you do not have to accept the full amount. If you want to reduce it down to just borrow what you want to, reduce it down. We encourage you to reduce those loans down. Most loans will be offered out for the full year. So if you are reducing it, though, it will be split equally between a fall and a spring semester. After you've accepted those loans, the financial aid office will start processing them. And then going back to that email, you probably need to check your email because we'll give you the next 2 steps. And the next 2 steps as a first-time borrower are done with the Department of Ed. And the first step is called entrance loan counseling. And so what this is it goes over your rights and responsibilities as a student loan borrower. It talks to you, or it walks you through about what to expect while you're in school on your loan, what to expect once you once you graduate or leave school. And then it talks about your responsibilities as being an informed borrower. That is an online process. However, if you as a student or a family would really like more information about loans, I would encourage you to call your financial aid office and say, hey, is there a chance that I could come in and do an entrance counseling in person? We're usually happy to do that. The second step that a student needs to complete with the Department of Ed is called a Master Promissory Note, or an MPN. And an MPN is quite literally the loan contract between the student and the Department of Ed, saying that they understand that they're taking out a loan and that they have to borrow it once they graduate or leave college. And so it has all of the loan legalese, all the fine print that none of us read, right? But it is essentially saying, here's the loan. Here's your repayment of the loan. Here's what's the interest. Here's how the loan's going to work. And it is a binding contract between the student and the government that makes them repay that loan. Once all 3 of those steps are completed, then the loan is good to process. As a student, there is no credit check or background check or anything like that to get the loans. They are guaranteed for you, which is a really beneficial thing for students. If you're almost there or you can't quite afford college and you really do need to take out that loan, it's so much different than going to a bank where you have to go through a credit check and potentially have a co-signer. Student loans are guaranteed, so you don't have to worry about any of those. And so, yeah, once you do all those 3 steps, you're good to go on the loans.
Great. Okay, Becca, I have one final question for you. This isn't necessarily the worst case scenario. You might just have to get a little creative. If the aid offer isn't enough to cover the student's full college costs, what kind of realistic options do they have next?
Yeah, that's rough, right? And there are different options based upon what your goals are, and having a realistic look of what your budget is. So let's just start with the what's one of the options that you could look at, which could potentially be taking less credit hours. So I talked about a goal earlier is you may have to extend how long you're in college because you want to stay away from debt. Well, you may also have to extend how long you're in college because your financial aid doesn't quite cover that. Most students hear that they need to take 12 credit hours. That's a full-time load. And every student's like, I talk to so many students, they're all like, no, I have to be full-time. No, you don't. You can take less than full-time credits. And yes, it will take longer to graduate. But if that's the way that you can do it and pay the difference or pay out of pocket, then take less credits. Take a little bit longer. I'll tell you, the majority of the students at Central Community College are not taking 12 credit hours. We are a primarily part-time institution. So it is taking longer than the typical 2 years for students to graduate with us. Another option is if you're looking to go to that bachelor's degree, do you have to start with the bachelor's degree? I'm at a community college. I have an amazing transfer program where we essentially set you up to get an associate's degree of transfer. And that allows you then to transfer right into a 4-year program. And so we really encourage you, if that's one of the options for you, to do it that way. So you may have a low cost the first 2 years, and then you're able to finish the last 2 years at the university or a state college to afford it that way. Another suggestion that I have for students, especially those that are going to an institution that requires you to live on campus that first year. If you are attending an institution that is in your hometown and has that requirement, you may want to consider living with your parents that first year. And I know that's horrible to hear, right? Like, oh gosh, I don't want to live with mom and dad for 1 more year or 2 more years. But a big chunk of change can go into that housing and those meals. And if you can reduce those housing and those meal plans down, it will help you afford college some more. And so those are things that I've talked to students about. There really is there's no one size fits all on how you make these decisions. And as a student and as a family, you really have to have some of those tough conversations to say, okay, realistically, what can we afford out of pocket? What could we be comfortable with in taking on debt? And what is your ultimate goal? And then you make those decisions and you make the tough choices from there.
Okay. That wraps us up. Thank you again, Becca, for joining us.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And to our audience, if you ever need help with anything college related, you can contact an Education Quest office near you for free help. You can find our contact information or schedule an appointment on educationquest.org. While you are there, sign up for the weekly Countdown to College email that's filled with all sorts of college tips and tricks. And finally, just help us get this message out to as many students and families as possible by subscribing to this podcast on your favorite platform and hitting the like button on this episode. Thank you for watching and listening, and we will see you next week.